In the Senate, there are huge benefits conferred on people who've been around for a long time. It's called seniority. And the rules of the Senate, the informal standards, give the people who've been around for a long time, by and large, a lot more power than the newbies. But there's some advantages to being new, too. And when it comes to prescription drugs and a lot of other issues, if if you're new in the Senate, it means you haven't been lobbied to death by big pharma, and it means you haven't inculcated the idea that taking on big pharma means you're putting your political future at risk. It means you haven't decided that things that everyone knows can be done and should be done can't be done. It means you can look at things honestly, and then if you care about healthcare for people, if you care about making prescription drugs affordable, you can actually advocate policies that make sense to anyone who thinks about it for 3 seconds and who doesn't decide that it's not politically doable. Senator Tina Smith is one of the two newest senators in the U.S. Senate. So she doesn't bring the assets and benefits of long service in the Senate and the seniority and the privileges conferred on those with seniority. But she does bring all the assets of having a fresh look and being able to put values into action. She's worked before she entered the Senate on prescription drug affordability. And she knows from experience in Minnesota, just as every single member in Congress knows, from their constituents, how crucial the issue is and how much people are hurting right now. She knows that, but she not only knows it, she's actually already doing something about it. Her first legislative act was to introduce legislation to lower prescription drug prices. You came in what, January 2nd or 3rd or something? So we're whatever today is, June 28th. So it's like we're counting down, right? Yeah. So it's a little over 6 months, 6.5 months, and already a great champion for us on prescription drug access, with I think much more exciting leadership to come. So we're thrilled to have one of the newest members of the Senate, Tina Smith, join us, and thrilled to have already one of the great leaders on prescription drug access.
Is not Cory Booker pretty spectacular? I know it. He came to Minnesota and did some stuff with me and Senator Klobuchar, and we loved having him. So as Rob was saying, I am a new United States Senator, but I got here by being an activist, just like all of you. That's how I got started. There's lots of different paths to the Senate, but that was my path. And as I was listening to Cory and I was thinking about all of you, I was remembering my mentor in Minnesota, Paul Wellstone. I know. And Paul said something that was so simple but profound that links up to me with what you all are here working on today. And he said, we all do better when we all do better. Should that not be the way that we approach every single public policy issue that we work on, but especially public policy related to healthcare? You know, I believe that healthcare ought to be a universal right and opportunity for everybody in this country, and that nobody in this country should have to choose between buying their healthcare, having healthcare, and buying their groceries or paying rent. And that is not the situation that we are in today. What can we do, especially, you all are here today to think about prescription medicine and what we can do to bring those prices down. And what I find so unacceptable about this is that there are people in this country, maybe even people in this room, who walk to a pharmacy to pick up their medication for themselves or a loved one, and they leave empty-handed because they get there and they realize that they cannot afford it. And how do you go home? How do you go home and explain that to your spouse or to your child? How do you tell them that you can't afford this basic thing that is going to help you survive or even thrive, even when it is so important to your life? You know, I see families in that position every single day. And do you know what I think is even more, it's despicable, that patients are going without essential medicines at a time when the big pharmaceutical companies are hauling in huge profits. And the drug company executives, they are getting paid tens of millions of dollars while people can't afford the medicine that they need to stay alive. Think about it. The Government Accountability Office estimates that among the top 25 pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies, annual profit margins hit somewhere between 15 and 20% from 2006 to 2015. 15 to 20%. And just as a comparison, a way of trying to put that into context, for the average profits of the largest Fortune 500 companies, the largest 500 companies, non-drug companies, that their average profit was between 4 and 9%. So 15 to 20% versus 4 to 9%. Here's what we know. In Washington, D.C., these big drug companies have spent hundreds of millions of dollars to rig the rules and protect the system that allows them to make profits like that. From January to March of this year, just this year, the big drug company industry group, pharma, spent over $10 million, setting a new record. $10 million in the first 3 months of this year to impact the decisions that get made in a world where we're all supposed to do better when we all do better. And their focus is really clear. Their goal is to stymie any efforts that we make to control prescription drug costs. And when we go to work against big special interests like this, we got to be organized, right? That's why you guys are all here. We got to come together and be organized to fight this concerted and very, very well-funded efforts. So let's just review a little bit some of the things that they say about how, what their talking points are. The first thing that they say is oh, drug pricing is so complicated. It is impossible to understand. And maybe what Congress should do is just study this problem a little bit. Right? You heard this? Do you buy this? No. I mean, that's simple. When prices are high, profits are high, and patients pay. That's what's simple. It's not that complicated. And I'd argue that this complexity that has been created by this system, this monopolistic system, I would argue that that complexity happens for a reason, because it obscures all of the ways that drug companies game this system to drive up their profits. But you guys, we cannot be paralyzed by this complexity. We have to be working for transparency and not buying into this idea that it's too complicated to solve. So here's a second talking point that they use all the time. They say drug prices are so high because of all the middlemen. It's the problem is with the insurance companies or the pharmacy benefit managers. Those are the real culprits when it comes to these high drug prices. I mean, do you think that that is the truth here? Do you think that's what's going on? Let's be real. Drug companies set drug prices. That's how it goes. They need to be held accountable here. I mean, lots of companies, it is true, lots of companies profit from high prices. Everybody, that's the problem with our system. Everybody in the drug industry does better when everybody makes more money. That doesn't help any of us in this room, but that is the system. But we cannot lose focus. We have got to hold the big drug companies accountable for the prices that they set, basically whatever price they want. Here's another talking point that we hear all the time. Drug prices are high because pharma companies are investing. They're investing in research and development and innovation, and that's why we have the best healthcare system in the world. Not true, right? Not true. First of all, it is taxpayers, not the big drug companies, that are subsidizing much of the basic research that leads to this innovation and new breakthroughs. Second, the revenue that pharma makes by charging higher prices to United States consumers far exceeds their global R&D budgets. Much greater. And then the third thing is that these big drug companies are spending huge amounts of money. Where is it going? To windfalls for investors, to CEO bonuses, to stock buybacks, rather than putting that money into lowering prices and putting that money into R&D. I mean, that's just not what is happening. And here's the last and often used talking point. President Trump and Secretary Azar and others in the Trump administration, well, they're taking on big pharma. They're doing everything they can to lower prices. Do you believe that? No. President Trump and his blueprint, I mean, it failed to do one of the main things he said he was going to do when he was campaigning for president. He says, we're going to allow Medicare to negotiate for lower drug costs. Do you remember when he said that? He says, when it comes time to negotiate the cost of drugs, we're going to negotiate like crazy. That's not happening. That is not happening. What have they done instead? This administration championed a huge tax cut to the wealthy. They cut taxes to pharmaceutical companies by 40%. That produced billions in a windfall for the big drug companies. They released this so-called comprehensive prescription drug blueprint that apparently was so hard on drug companies that their stock price went up. Now, you don't have to go to business school to know that if your stock price goes up, that's because investors think they're going to be making more money. You guys, we have got to do better than this, and that is why you are here. I am working hard already in Congress to hold these big drug companies accountable. My very first bill was what Corey was talking about, to fix this loophole that allows this pay to delay, where the big drug companies pay the generic companies to keep their drugs off the market a little bit longer so that they can make a little bit more money. I'm working with many of my colleagues, including Corey, on broader legislation that promotes transparency, increases affordability, and also improves innovation. We have got to work together on this, and we cannot take their talking points as gospel. We have to fight against it with facts and with energy and with organizing. I know that Corey was talking about never being more optimistic than now. I wish I could say that right now. Not been the easiest of several days, but I go back to what Paul said, that we know that we all do better when we all do better. We know that when we organize, we can make a difference. And we know, this is what you are doing right now, our voices are strong, but only if we use them. So let's use them. Thank you so much.